All right, beginning the bulletin with Sri Lanka presidential elections. Vote counting is underway in Sri Lanka. Halfway through counting in the polling divisions, there's very little between the two leading candidates, Anura Dissanayake and Sajith Premadasa. Now, as of now, leading candidate Anura Kumara Disanayake's share has now fallen to under 40% of the vote. Sajith Premadasa has reduced the margin. He now holds over 34% of the vote, and Ranil Wickremesinghe is in the third position with just over 17%. Votes have so far been counted for 87 out of 160 polling divisions. When counting began earlier in the day, the Dissanayake had a massive lead with over 50% of the vote in early trends. But as of now, no candidate holds a 50% majority required. In Sri Lanka's election system, voters can mark one candidate on their ballot or rank three candidates in order of preference. If no candidate gets 50% or more of the vote, a second round of counting factors in the preferences of voters whose first choice did not make it to the top two. The counting is underway amid tight security. The Election Commission has been praised for holding what many observers describe as the most peaceful presidential election. The big focus still remains on the three anticipated preferential candidates: Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, main opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, and Marxist-leading challenger Anura Kumara Dissanayake. The election is widely seen as a referendum on Rajapaksa's successor Ranil Wickremesinghe, who has restored some stability through austerity policies backed by the International Monetary Fund. Now, on the other hand, the measures, including tax hikes, have left millions struggling to make ends meet and are unpopular with many voters. All right. Now, the voting counting is underway in Sri Lanka, and halfway through the counting in three polling divisions, there is very little between the two leading candidates, Anura Dissanayake and Sajith Premadasa. Now, Anura Kumara Disanayake's share has now fallen to under 40% of the vote. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Dasani Athoda. She's joining us on the broadcast live from Colombo. Thank you for joining us again, Dasani. Now, of course, Dissanayake has fallen under 40%, but Premadasa is getting closer. Now, the race seems to be getting more intense and close. We are assured of a second round. Is that it?
Well, at the moment, when we look at the total elections that have, the results rather, that have been released so far, all of the postal votes, that means 22 out of 22 postal votes have been released. Of the 22 districts, only 5 district results have been released. And in terms of polling divisions, of the 160, 86 polling division results have been released. At the moment, yes, it does look like for the first time in Sri Lanka, we might be looking at the preferential voter system coming into play, because as of right now, Anura Kumara Dissanayake is leading with a cumulative voter count of 39.36%, and Sajith Premadasa is leading in second with 34.35% of cumulative votes. So this is an interesting time, as I mentioned before, because this preferential voter system has not been used here in Sri Lanka for the past presidential elections. However, when we spoke to a few sources, they did mention that election counting officers have sort of begun to make those preferential counts as well.
Now, we were earlier talking to you, and you talked about some crucial seat. Can you tell us about how are the voters in different regions playing a role in maintaining this tight race between Dissanayake and Premadasa?
I think something that is interesting to see in these cumulative results is that the total votes received by Sajith Premadasa and Ranil Wickremesinghe, if you add both of them together, that is still higher than the total that Anura Kumara Dissanayake has accumulated so far. This brings to question whether the faction within the United National Party, the faction that led to Sajith Premadasa going his own way, did that really cost either of these candidates their title as president? In terms of the North fielded in their own candidate this time for the first time, who was also one of the frontrunners in terms of obtaining votes, massive number of votes in those northern areas.
Well, now, you must have been asking around, so what kind of reactions have you been observing from around you after this result is slowly tickering in?
I think a lot of the people are a little surprised, especially in areas such as Central Colombo, which are heavily favored towards candidates like Sajid Premadasa and Ranil Wickremesinghe. However, people in rural areas are quite elated, to say the least, to see that their candidate, a candidate that some of them have been voting for decades, is finally coming into that spotlight and is just mere moments away from being declared as president. So it's a mixed emotions all around. But definitely a lot of people who have voted for Andhra Kumar Dissanayake are waiting for the next few hours to hear that all-important announcement of the final count.
All right, Dasni, thank you so much for bringing the latest. Of course, we'll be keeping track of what happens next. Now, Sri Lanka's election process is complicated, and at a time when there is no front runner, so far, the election could produce no clear winner. So what happens next? In our next report, my colleague Anandatta explains.
Sri Lanka's presidential elections follow a unique process. Designed in 1981, voters participate in a limited ranked voting system, which basically means that they can express up to 3 preferences for the president. Let's break that down for you. Imagine you're a voter and you have head out on election day. Now this year there are record 39 candidates. But to keep it simple, let's consider a hypothetical situation with just 5 candidates: A, B, C, D and E. According to the rule, you can have 3 preferences. Let's say your first preference is A, second is B and third is C. Once all votes are counted and A gets over 50% of the votes, she or he is the clear winner. But there can also be another situation where no candidate gets over 50% of votes immediately. In that case, all candidates except the 2 with the highest number of votes are eliminated. And after this, the second and third preferences from the eliminated candidates are redistributed. So in our hypothetical situation, all votes of B, D and E will be transferred to A and C. And the process will continue until one of the 2 candidates secures an outright majority. What's interesting is that in practice, this system has rarely been used in Sri Lanka. So much so that many citizens are unaware that they can rank multiple candidates. The reason is that since the start of elections, only one candidate from either major parties have become a clear winner. This time it might be different. More than 17 million people are eligible to vote. The results are expected within a day of voting, and the winner must be sworn in within 2 weeks.